things off with Dave Perry. Where does Project X get its story ideas from?
First couple of films, the stories actually came from the professor that was leading the project. But for the last 5 films, they've all been student generated. We take an entire semester with concept artists and students that are interested in developing story, and work out the theme and the plot and the storyboards, along with all of the kind of conceptual assets that are necessary in order to take it into production, and really build it over that first semester collaboratively with a group of students. It's a really fun experience, and it's a wonderful opportunity to just really dig in and get involved with story structure.
Obviously, this isn't, you don't do everything on your own, right? You've got other departments that are helping put these great products together. Tell us a little bit about how you interact with other departments and which departments those are.
Absolutely. So actually, one of the things we're trying to do is always see how we can incorporate other groups. We'll have project managers from the business program, students that are dedicated to keep track of schedule, figure out what our resources are, help us track assets through the production. When you're dealing with a short film that's 5 to 7 minutes, there's a lot that's created, a lot that has to keep track of, not only where is it, but what stage of development is it in. So that's a wonderful opportunity. Audio is a huge part. There's nothing more painful than spending 4 months just staring at your animation without any audio. So the day that audio comes in and drops music and sound effects into your scene, it's like, oh, it's alive. It's so wonderful. And so we'll work with the audio team, and Zoe's group will come in. Both, I kind of bridge both PX and MediaWorks, really integrated with the audio students during the MediaWorks production. We're a little bit more staged in PX, but Zoe and I have been having conversations about, and Julius also is another audio instructor, about maybe bringing the audio team a little early during the conceptual stage, and maybe doing some score sketches to help set the tone that we can then carry into the production, because ultimately audio will come in at the end. And maybe Zoe can talk a little bit about that process. Absolutely. But his audio team will come in and really kind of finish the wrapping and put the bow on the project.
Yes, I'm so itching to talk about that since you mentioned about the audio, right? So actually, audio team, including the faculty and the student, get involved with the animations project from the very early stage. I believe it's like 2D animatic, which is when they only have the bunches of different frames, just sketch out different idea for animation. And actually, audio student get the script, right, from the project, and we actually have a post. We make it like a real production pipeline. We actually post around the campus. We're looking for voice-over artists, meaning the female voice-over artists, male voice-over artists, and we actually have the post of that, and we open it completely to any student from any department, not only from audio department, but from animation, from game, from business and computer science, to anyone who would like to participate in this type of project. So what we ask for those applicants, that they can actually record their own voice. We send them a short script. They're gonna record their own voice using the phone and everything, and they're gonna send us that audio clip. And audio student, the faculty and the animation students sit down, and we actually listen through different audio file from different students sent in, and we pick the one that have the timbre, the kind of character, the vocal timbre that match the character the most. Even though it's that stage, it's always about the idea, sketches on the paper, but we already have that type of vision. Okay, if that character is in 60 years old, not very healthy, and we have to look for those kind of voice that's a little bit cracking, a little bit deep and a bit old like that. So that process is actually very interesting project process. You know, it's time tedious, but it's actually really fun for audio student to experience the real audio pipeline production.
What's interesting to me is I do a little bit of video work myself, and my process is always like, let's just call it family videos, right? Vacation videos. I'm the opposite. I have the pictures, but I start with the audio soundtrack, and I use the audio to define how much time I have and the points at which I want certain things to happen within the film. So I'm intrigued, Dave, by the fact that you don't actually do that until later. And I heard Zoe, you guys talking about, well, maybe we're going to change that process a little bit. So how do you go about that without knowing what it's going to sound like?
Yeah. So two things that we can talk about there. On the longer format, where oftentimes the challenge is kind of consistency and maintaining a level of performance throughout, both visually and audially. The development process is so long on the visual side. We literally take 3 semesters to produce the piece. That it's the interaction is a lot slower. And sometimes, while we do have a blueprint for what we would like to execute, we will find partway through the process that certain scenes aren't working the way we expected them to, or that we will have, as stuff starts to come in to the film, get dropped in to the animatic, the storyboard sequence. We'll show other people. And what makes complete sense to us as the authors that know where the story is going, sometimes you'll get like, what's that? What's going on there? And so there may be a little bit of adjustment. For audio, that's a huge challenge. If we start kind of expanding or contracting after they have started scoring, where they're creating a composition that matches and supports the emotional and psychological tones of the various scenes. If we kind of like, oh, we're going to stretch this a little bit, we need another extra shot here, the composer goes, but my climax doesn't happen at the climax anymore.
So what I just mentioned is basically a very early stage when we drafting the idea, the storyboard, those kind of things. But obviously we have like more than just one phase. This is just the very first phase when we interact each other. The interaction and collaboration actually happen more frequently in the later phases.
So Zoe, I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
No, sorry, just really quick to dovetail. MediaWorks, when your Project X is this much longer project, MediaWorks, it's like a hitman. You got to get in and get out. We work with 2 clients a semester. Our development time would probably have 1 to 2 weeks to really lock down an idea. We have maybe 2 to 3 weeks to actually produce it. And so one of the things that's happening right at that point is that we are being very committed with our decisions, and the audio team is making those decisions with the visual team along the way, and we get to what's called a time lock, where even though we haven't done the animation, we have to agree that this is how long each of those shots are going to take, because because the duration of the production, audio has to be working alongside us at the same time. We can't wait. We don't have the schedule to allow them.
It's only
to
7 weeks long, so it's only 7 weeks long. So that's more like a real-time collaboration.
So that if you're working in a studio that was doing commercial work or something like that, that's very common.
The good thing is that MediaWorks usually in the shorter type of production. The product is actually shorter. It's sometimes just 5 seconds for commercial ad. Branding video sometimes it's like 30 seconds, but it's not like Project X. It's 5 to 7 minutes. It's a lot of thing in there.
So Zoe, but I want to answer some of the questions that have come up. But before we do that, can you talk a little bit about what Foley is, and at what point does that come in versus the scoring for any of these films?
Well, I mean, first on the drafting, we just pick some random sample from a library available, right? But when the picture is locked, we actually do the real deal recording. If you ever watch any animation movie, you probably hear a lot of things going on in there. None of them are actual real. Everything is post-production, right? So even for the footstep, animation scenes showing somebody's walking on the gravel surface, for example,
Mhm.
our studio actually have a box, a wooden box that they put any material in there. So we usually put gravel in there and we bring that box into our recording studio, and we actually have someone wear the kind of similar type of shoes with whatever we see on the scene, and we play back the scene, and that person will walk inside the shoes, try to hit exactly the point that's the scene show the footstep hit on the floor, and that's how we capture the sound of the gravel. And that's one example of the Foley. Anything you hear, like closes, like key jingles, those type of things, we call that the Foley recording. So we kind of have to stage it in the recording studio.
When does that happen? Does that happen in post at the end, or do you
And
do
yeah,
that?
that's usually we have the
score
picture locked.
first?
Yeah, the picture is
Okay.
locked. Yeah.
Awesome. So let me go to a few questions here. Look, Sean's asking a question that's a little more technical. A question on the mixing and mastering equipment and microphones that we have, Zoe, and how it compares to other universities. And since you've worked at other universities, you can probably speak to
Absolutely.
what we have.
I mean, for the equipment, we have all type of equipment that's, we have both equipment that can support you to work in a digital format and analog format, right? So we have the whole range from, entry level equipment, intermediate level equipment, and advanced high-end equipment for you to experience a different type of sound coloration from different instrument, right? And equipment. One thing I want you to know that's something is really special about us. Many other institutions and programs teach how to use the tools. And that's when they always emphasize the importance of having the latest tool, the most expensive tools. Here we do slightly different. Obviously, we have a great tool, but we teach the concept of how to use a tool when you need to use that tool. I think it's much more important, because when somebody stuck in a tool or a software, they would get stuck when they go to work in some places they don't have that kind of software or tool. So we do it very differently. We teach the concept, we train on the concept. We want to make sure our student can work well with any kind of tool, work well with any kind of equipment they have on hands to work to finish the project successfully.
That's a really good point. So instead of teaching every little detail, if I were to transition to business in Excel, you teach the idea of spreadsheets and say, hey, you can work in Excel, you can work in Google Sheets, you can work in you name it, and you'll have that versatility.
And one more point I want to add, like, even though it's weird, you are a master of one tool, next 5-10 years, there will be some other new tool replace that one. And that's when you're already out of college. How can you get back to college and learn? Are you going to go back to the college and learn the new tool again? No, right? So the concept is actually something that you really need to grasp on that one. That will translate to any tool, any new software in the future.
I'm computer science. Think about in computer science, what you can think of same thing. Some of the prospective students ask us, what language you are teaching? If you're not teaching C#, I'm not coming in here, or HTML or something. And that's not the right question to ask. Right question to ask is, how do you teach a language kind of scenario, rather than saying what language you teach. I'll give you an example. In DataWorks, one of the company, I think is going to come later, asked us, our student, to write code for them, a real company, Silicon Valley company, in Go language. Believe it or not, I had never heard Go language, never heard. I said, okay, we'll take it. And I told my student, guys, and I learned it really overnight, what it is Go language. And I showed them a little bit, and didn't even teach really. I said, hey, this C language does this way, C++ does this, Java does this way, this is how this one does. Guys, go figure. Here is a Java code, convert that one in Go language. Believe it, within a week, students did it. Why they did it is the way we teach them. Learning to learn is very important. How to teach any language, they just pick up very quickly once you learn that. We don't have to teach tons of languages. Tomorrow, as Joe said, which language is going to come? I don't know.
We want to teach the artists. We want it, and programmers are just as much artists, and business people, kind of how they conceive of ideas are just as much artists as somebody that draws and does concepts. It's how you approach the problem. I mean, and it's important to understand the tool well enough that you understand how a category of tools work, so that you can be competent enough to show what you're capable of with one of the tools, but at the same time have an underlying understanding with what's going on, so that you can then transfer that knowledge to the tool that your prospective employer is using. You know, Ricardo can talk to this game. It's like, well, what engine are you using? Are you using Unreal? Are you using, I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
No, yeah, I was going to just jump on board and say that even as gamers, you're probably, you know, if you've been alive like 10 years, you've already seen the change of platforms. You've already seen PS3 go to PS4, go to PS5, you know, Xbox 3. So you'll see, so you already intuitively or subconsciously like, oh yeah, hardware is going to change, software is going to change, you know, modeling. Oh, you know, when I was a youngling, it was all about Maya. Well, what we need to learn Blender. It's just like Blender's the worst. You know, it's always going to be, it's always going to update. You know, innovation is the only thing, you know, constant is change. So you really need to, what Benit said, you need to learn how to learn. You need to know the underlying concept. Kind of, you know, exactly. If you're a good artist, you make the tool work for you. You do not, you shouldn't be subject to the limitations of the tool. You know, because I always have young kids come up to me and they're like, oh, you know, why are you guys using Maya? Why would, you know, Blender is going to be the next big thing? And I have to tell them, you know what? If right now all the studios said we're switching to Blender, do you know who would get the jobs and continue doing the work? The same artists. They would just spend a week learning Blender. Because they're not going to hire you just because you know a program, right? So it's really about knowing like the why you do things, and the tools really is the easiest part, right? But just to reiterate, we do teach that as well. But you know, it's hard to not teach software and hardware when you're doing something like what we're doing. So we don't want to emphasize it, you know. Because there's that.
I love this. I love this discussion. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, because now there's like, you know, now there's AI that's just like, oh, you know, I'm sure Benit's gonna talk about that later. But
have you ever worked with visual effects, stop motion, computer graphics, cinematography, or motion testing?
We've worked with dynamics in Maya, and we've also have Houdini. And so the effects in all the PX films have been created with those. In addition to that, outside of the project classes, we teach dynamics class. So it's about doing simulations, fire, water, smoke, explosions, that type of stuff. And then there's real world effects that, you know, if you get into game studio, a lot of the effects in those engines, you know, the hardware and the software is sophisticated enough to generate really surprising stuff real time. I love stop motion. I have a warm spot in my heart for stop motion. I love Leica Studios. Unfortunately we don't.
You don't want to turn your 3-semester moving into like a 20-semester movie.
No.
No. Need a 10-year project. Yeah. So Gabriel says, so soon in my school, I'm going to take computer science. So Benit, I'm thinking this is for you. Is that a good class to take before coming to USV? Are there any other recommendations?
Gabriel, I don't know what computer science class.
High school.
Any class you take is going to be advantage to you. We don't require it at all. We take it people who has no programming experience at all, but you'll be having upper hand yourself. You'll feel at home once you know something, and then you can have more good conversation in the class, be able to understand it is. And if you need more challenge, you can ask teacher to give you more challenging questions. And hey, come to me. I have always a lot of projects for you.
It's
here.
true. He does talk to a lot of high school students. So Gabriel, feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to answer more questions for you offline. Michael has a question, says, going back to programs, what programs would you say you focus on most? And would we get to learn the fundamentals of Maya, Blender, Unreal Engine, etc.?
I'll jump on this and then pass it off to you, Ricardo, because it sounds like a visual/game question. We focus on Maya currently, and in the DAA program, we used to teach multiple pieces of software, and what we found, this kind of goes to our conversation before, we found that we were spending more time, and students were spending more time teaching and learning a program as opposed to how to do something awesome with a program. And so we focus on Maya, and I know sometimes Blender is a free program. It's a really cool thing that Autodesk does. Check this out. They give free 1-year licenses to students, and that includes high school students. So you can go to autodesk.com. I don't work for them. They don't charge. It's free. But you can sign up as a student there, and you can get access to fully functional seats of Maya. So I know some students turn to Blender, and I'm not going to discourage you from doing that, but oftentimes they do it because they think that they don't have the capability to have access to Maya, and that's not actually true. Autodesk has been wonderful in that fashion, really forward thinking when it comes to software.
Yeah, Autodesk student. Yeah, you have access to a lot of their, not just Maya, but a lot of their stuff.
Your dad works there. Awesome.
Yeah. All right, we'll definitely be reaching out to you, Gabriel. Our director of career service is going to be calling you. Gabriel, Diana Rotolo, are you online? If you are, can you give?
I am.
Give Gabriel your email, please, and you can connect with him. He's a junior right now, but
Hello.
Diana's a great person to talk to. So let me try to summarize this for you guys that are new to our real world project studios. And I'm sure I'll be corrected if I get it wrong. Project X does short animated films over 18 months to 2 years, essentially. And there's a lot of amazing films on our YouTube channel, which I'm also asked Diana to post. And join the 150,000 subscribers that we have. So that's what Project X does. MediaWorks works with 10 to 12 clients on really short projects, like 45 seconds to 2-minute films on services, whatever it might be, throughout the year. So 10 to 12 of those a year. It's a really cool thing. You can get lots of experience and you can build out your portfolio. I'm going to give you an example of that in just a second, but I don't want to leave out DataWorks. Benny, what's the best way to describe DataWorks?
Big data. That's what it is.
Big data. Big data. I'm still learning about DataWorks. It's actually our newest studio, and they're doing some incredible stuff. And Benito will talk a little bit more about that later. And of course, Game Studio is sort of obvious. Ricardo, who leads the game design and development department.
We make all kinds of games. So like earlier, Dave was talking about like how they choose stories. For Game Studios, we basically have our students, either work with an external client where they'll create all types of games for them, depending on the client, or we'll have a student-run project where they pitch, like they're a studio pitching to, let's say, a larger company. So they would need to know like why, what would make the game fun, the basic small schedule, like what's going to take to make this game and who the game is for. So it's almost just like an actual indie studio pitching to like a larger publisher. Somebody asked earlier, we don't have a specific VR class, but some of those game studio projects have been VR projects. We did create a VR kind of training sim for the Stanford Children's Hospital. Some students have made a bunch of just VR games that are student-run projects. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, and MediaWorks did a VR experience exhibit as one of its projects.
This is a MediaWorks project. It's a 45-second video that we did for Moonshot Pirates.
They say the youth is our future, but we're not just the future. We're the present, too. Sometimes, all you need is a push in the right direction. And we give you the resources you need to create world-changing solutions. The path to success isn't always a smooth one, But with creativity and a bit of perseverance, anything is possible. Our actions today can make a world of difference tomorrow. The world is full of problems just waiting to be solved. Want to solve them? Become a moonshot pirate too.
Dave, Zoe, maybe we could talk about this a little bit about the animation, the audio that went into it, and a product that was delivered for a client.
It was a challenging project, and one of the things that MediaWorks gives you a lot of experience with, both as instructors and as students, is the concept of scope. Some clients come in with this very narrowly focused kind of little, we just want this little very refined gem, and some companies have a much larger project in mind, and so you have to take a look. What's the message? What's the story that they want to tell? What's the size of the project? What are the tools that are going to allow us to produce that? And what are our resources? A lot of it, sometimes it depends entirely on the number of students that we have signed up in the class. So you have kind of your studio workforce, and then you have the goal that you're going for. And so we used a series of tools, Photoshop, Illustrator, and After Effects to create the visuals for that. And then Zoe can talk about audio recording and the music that went along with that. It's a really cool, just real quick, really cool organization. They actually are an incubator for entrepreneurial ideas to change the world that high schoolers come up with. They specifically work with high schoolers. They say, come to us with your ideas. They actually have camps. They're in Europe, but they have camps.
And the organization is based in Austria. It's international organization.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Yeah. So, at first, everything started with the conceptualization phase, right? That when we met with the client, we understand the idea, what the message they want to convey in this type of video, what they are looking for. And our student in audio side, animation student probably prepare some sketches as well, right? Some board story, but audio student usually prepare some just like audio sample, short music samples, and discussion forth and back with the clients about what type of sound do they like, right? What type of music they want to be played in their video in there. So that's the first conceptualization phase. And then after that, both students from both departments will start working on the drafting phase, which is I believe that animation, Drake can talk more about that. I think they have more just like a storyboard still, or some kind of sketching, right? Still, but audio student actually create some musical cues, right? Short musical phases, and we have more sound effect blended together. And not only for one version, we have few different versions. So client will come back and they will listen to those type of different versions. And either they will pick one. Sometimes they don't like any at all. None of them would work. And that's when, right after that, all students gonna get back to the studio, create something completely new, completely different than what they produced earlier. And then we'll meet the client again. And that process, if we're lucky, we got something that client likes right on the first round. But sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 more rounds to be able to have something that the clients satisfied with, right? And then after that, after they choose a version, the next phase is going to be production phase. That's when audio students work really hard on doing voiceover, studio recording, and the Foley recording, create new sound sample, music composition. We have a different role. So all students as a team, we have different role, right? This is the sound effects creators, this is a sound designer, this is the music composers, and those sort of thing. And each of them will have their own milestone and target to hit. You have to have this composition done and those kind of things. And obviously, after we have all the pictures, all the animation part come back from the audio, from animation student, we'll try to map those music compositions perfectly to what's going on in the visual effect.
all of the work that you guys are doing as creatives and technologists gets managed through project management skills so our business students have the opportunity to help lead these exercises. And I'll let John speak to this in just a moment about our certification with the Project Management Institute. But I also want to say, if you were listening to what Zoe is saying, you're not just learning skills about being creative and technical and all of those aspects to building this product for your portfolio. You're dealing with a client who maybe doesn't know exactly what they want. So I can't imagine a better experience than listening to someone and trying to interpret what they mean, presenting them with ideas, going back to the drawing board. He talked about going back to the drawing board sometimes 5 times. There's a rumor, and I won't say, I heard from another instructor, there was one client that was very, very challenging. I hear the number got to be like 50, but I don't know if that just grew over time, but there can be some really challenging companies to deal with. But what better real world experience than that to take with you as you leave university? So with that, let me just turn it to John for a moment. John, you want to talk a little bit about project management skills and our accreditation, our certification?
Project management is really a big part of what we do in business, not only in creative sciences, but everything else. So we are aligned with PMI, Project Management Institute. So we offer a graduate certificate in project management. When you complete that, it's 12 hours. You can set for the PMI certification, which is really great to have. You can also stack those 12 hours into our MBI program, or our Masters of Business Innovation. Our whole program integrates with everybody. Probably a good example is with Benit. Some of his CS students jumped over into a program with my business group for a major 250, Fortune 250 corporation. And they put a project together that saved that company $2.2 million a year with a $30 million 10-year life cycle savings. So those are the kind of things we can do. You can have all the creative things you want, but if you can't manage them to make money, you're not going to be around very long. So our program will teach you in the business to integrate with a lot of different areas, teach you to be fast, smart, and agile, because you have to be that in today's world. Business is changing as fast as technologies are changing.
Thank you, John. I'm going to get back to the questions. Before I do, I think there was a question down below, so I'll kind of address it now, which is talk a little bit about, we always say project-based learning is one of the core principles of University of Silicon Valley. Can you guys speak to that? I mean, I think it's, in some ways it's obvious based on these projects, right? But how would you describe project-based learning in that experience at USV?
And we have 2 types of classes. We have what I would consider to be the fundamental skills classes, and there will be projects in those. But they're very focused on teaching specific sets of skills, specific knowledges, areas of knowledge and techniques. The concept of these larger project-based classes is that there's no rote assignment. It's like you don't get a handout that says you have to do this, turn it in by this date. Hopefully it works, you get your grade. These projects allow you and challenge you to take those skills, to take your ingenuity and to apply it to a much broader, more general question of, make a short film, make a 30-second explainer video for this chip company. Those types of challenges, make a side scroller platform that that kids are going to enjoy, whatever it is. Then you apply those skills to in your ideas to that. So you get to put in practice, in fact, you're required to put into practice on your own. And there are faculty that are there to provide guidance and mentorship, but we're there to encourage you to come up with the solutions, for you to create the successes. The second thing that happens, and this is something that comes from just being a group project as opposed to working on your own. When you're doing your own assignment in a class, it's up to you to decide how much you put into it and how far you take it. And for a variety of reasons, you may not be able to take it to that A level. It may be that you don't have the time. It may be that, oh, there was a little bit of information that you didn't quite understand. It could be a variety of reasons. And you turn it in and it's a B minus, something like that. And you learn from it and you move on. The challenge of a project class is that you live with that. And so one of the things is that what you create, somebody else is going to use. And if you don't create up to a very high standard, somebody else is going to have something that isn't quite as functional, quite as successful, to allow them to do their job. And so there's a fair amount of kind of I call it self-inspiration that you're required to kind of put into it to live up to the standard. And sometimes you're done and the answer is you're not done.
Start over.
I know that it's complete, but it's not good enough, and it'll go back around. And that's a really important part of the experience, because that's what job life is like. You're not allowed to turn in a C on the job because they can't use it. They can't use that work. It's gotta be, A minus, A level work. And so I think this is where a lot of the synergies of projects come from. And I'm going to throw Benita Bone here because programming hasn't quite gotten the spotlight enough yet. But part of Project X were multiple semesters and with a lot of complex technology that we have to link together. His students can do tools programming. So actually write programs that assist the production flow of a visual, a 3D visual piece of film.
That's a great lead in to what the next video I'm going to show, which is another MediaWorks project. It was for a client called Diamante. Before I show you, Diamante was brought in. It was a startup company. Benit, can you speak to a little bit about the history, and then we'll talk about what we did for them, and then I'll get back to questions, I promise.
Surely. Actually, Diamante was one of our debut company whom we reached out when I was starting DataWorks Project Studio first time in computer science department. And what they are is they create a hardware. Think about a hardware is a private cloud. The thing about, we say cloud, AWS, Google, and everything is in cloud, but they create a hardware where everything is there. Compute is like 384 gigabyte memory will be there. There will be, everything of networking, everything is right there, one box. And that is where they wanted us to do their, testing for them, write the code for the testing. And then that's the first project computer science department did it for them, the Go language program I was talking about. Then, I connected, I found out that they need some help in their advertising and all that. I said, hey, Zoe, there is somebody, why don't you talk to them? And that's what this project came about later on. I can even throw out some.
Yeah, well, so let me show it and then we'll speak to it. I can tell you it was confusing to me. Benny was explaining it to me early on about Diamante and what they did and this thing called Kubernetes, which was new to me. You're going to hear a little bit about it in this video. So let me show you.
Companies in every industry rely on software to connect the world, connecting buyers and sellers, coordinating a global supply chain, and delivering content to your computer or mobile device. Today's software developers are leading the charge with modern distributed applications that run on Kubernetes, an open source orchestration platform for containerized applications. The challenge for many enterprises is that they take these new applications and run them on legacy infrastructure. That's where problems begin. Legacy architectures rely on outdated storage and networking solutions that don't have visibility into containers. That means different containers can consume more than their share of I/O, creating noisy neighbor issues. These monolithic architectures are also inefficient, putting more strain on the available resources and resulting in over-provisioning and higher costs. Finally, failures are bound to happen, and many monolithic architectures don't include solutions to help back up and protect your applications. That's why there is Diamante. Running modern applications on modern infrastructure just makes sense. Diamante is solving the challenge of container-based hybrid clouds with a simple and cost-effective platform for managing Kubernetes applications and data. Diamante includes a multi-cluster management solution, a container-aware data plane solution for guaranteed quality of service of networking and storage, and a purpose-built architecture with I/O offload technology to ensure the highest performance for your data-intensive mission-critical applications. And it comes complete with built-in, high availability, backup, and DR solutions to protect your applications. All of this results in a simple, efficient, and protected solution for managing Kubernetes applications and data. Diamante's platform propels enterprises to modernize their architectures and head to the clouds. It's time to get started on your Kubernetes journey with Diamante. All aboard!
I love that video because there are words I don't understand. However, I get the concept, and I love that what the team did here was visually take this sort of antiquated old train, which everyone can identify with, and then go to this futuristic, organized, clean, techie train, right? And so even if you don't understand exactly what each of these concepts are, you get the idea of what this is as a layperson. So really, Beneath, speak to this project, and then of course, Dave and Zoe. It's really nice.
Actually, I want to make, before I specifically talk to this project, I want to make 2 points important for everybody to get it. When you, the audience here, the participants here, you guys are incoming student kind of ideas, right? You might want to go to another university or what have you. Do not think that the day one you come in here and that's what you are producing. That's not what we are trying to tell you. This is your final year projects, okay? So what happens coming from first semester towards this side, we have lots of tool classes. We don't get us wrong. We will teach you tools. We'll teach you programming. We'll teach you, video production. You teach all of the game studio, everything you need for gaming or audio. You will learn those. Plus, we talked about the project classes. There is a studio 1, 2, 3 before you come to this real world project studio. So one will teach you all of the tools, little bit we teach you, but there you are taking a baby steps on going on your own. We'll take out the training wheels from there. Now you are your own. Then you will become more creative to think about, not only to think of using the tool, now you will create the tool. That's what we have a tools programming where you have to brush some, if you look at Eric's background, there is mesh in there, and you brush one of those. How do you make all of them brushed out in the same way? You make a tools, it will just do it for you. So you will learn those kind of craft in 1, 2, 3. And also you are learning exactly similar tools currently in Silicon Valley or in the world in your area are using it. So you are going to use similar tools in here. Now you get ready for this kind of project coming in. So that's where we say, there is no training wheel here. There is a top down. Hey, create one. Here is one project. We got it from, say, Israeli company. They want this. Now we go, figure it out. I don't know. It's up to you. and then one of my great example today, only our student did our final project where they, computer science student had to figure it out how the Unreal Engine works. They don't know. and my student learned it really, because I never taught them. They learned it because they know how to learn, okay? And they got it. So this is the important point what I wanted to talk about first. But this Diamante, again, you just saw it, what it is. Think about any computer when you are putting a software in here. So what happens is there's a lot of moving parts for one software. There is a library, there is a UI, there is this, that, and all that is all discrete. And if you put another system in there, and that may come and clutter and overwrite something else used by some other software, the libraries and all that. So this, what you just saw, this Diamante solves the problem. It says that, you know what? No. Every program which is going to come is coming in their own container. All the library and everything comes in here in one place. I just put that container in this computer, and another software comes in, but needs says, our even in many places we run into issues. You put one software, next time you put another software, and it was the same library. This guy used the old library, now this other guy don't work. Yeah. So this solves that problem. This Diamante solves that problem, saying no, don't do that. Put everything in one container. It uses old library, in other words, new library. Nobody will conflict. Everybody's happy camper. That's what it is.
I'm curious from Dave and Zoe's standpoint. It's a relatively complex concept to understand. So how did you help the students understand it and then come up with the concept of how you wanted to present this in a way that would make it, easy for all of us to understand?
Yeah. So a couple of things. Number one, we actually met with a client and they explained. Okay, sorry.
How many times?
They attempted to explain.
Yes, thank you.
and everybody took notes, including the visual instructors like Kubernetes. Yeah. Okay. And then I turned to some friends that I know that are in programming and that are, and that are in server tech. And I said, this is what I think. And they said, no, Dave, that's not quite it. And so, but we had these conversations also with the students in class. And so it's one of these things like, well, I think they're saying this, is this what they mean? And so grasping this kind of concept. So then once you understand it, then you try to, the challenge wasn't to actually explain it in technical terms. The client said, we can do that. Yeah. We need something that explains it in abstract terms, that communicates it to somebody that just wants to know kind of the overall purpose of it, as opposed to the Benit explanation of it. And so, I think one of the challenges on the visual side, and Zoe can probably speak to kind of the corollary that was going on the audio side, was that the piece that we wound up creating is in two stages. And the first stage is, this is the dysfunctional way. Mm-hmm. And this is the good way. And it's like, well, okay, so we want to make something that looks good, but not too good. And we want to make something that moves, but not too well. And so part of you as an artist that's creating that kind of old West vibe with clunky robots and kind of janky animation, you're kind of going, oh, I'm making bad animation here. and the important thing was we were making purposeful animation. We were making purposeful imagery so that we could contrast that with the Kubernetes solution, the futuristic solution. Because if we executed with grace at the beginning, people go, well, why go into the sky if it's all pretty down here? And so that was one of the challenges. Audio had similar challenges. We want it to sound not so good, but not so bad that somebody stops watching.
Yep. So when we try to convey this message, if you remember correctly, we're on the same page with animation, right? So now animation students already know how to convey that message. Audio need to be able to implement that idea, right? And complement it. So obviously, with this kind of method, with this idea concept, we cannot just use traditional sound effects or traditional instrument, right? So most of the sound in there, audio students have to kind of design from scratch. So we would use computer software, we'd use synthesizer to kind of create those kind of futuristic sci-fi type of sound that you probably never heard before. It's similar to something you probably heard it from Star Wars and stuff, right? But there's a lot of sound in there that is not like a real sound. We synthesize it. We use different software, use synthesizers. And obviously at first, if you notice carefully, if you hear the audio, you would hear more, I would say the term is dissonant. Dissonant, it means something unpleasing type of sound, right? To represent that, okay, something is doesn't really work out really well. And that level of dissonance get diminished gradually to the end, that we hear the tone is a little bit more clearly, it's a little bit more melodic, the harmonic progressions a little bit more nice than before. So we kind of try to convey that message. Okay, so at first it doesn't really work, but now everything get into the right form, right shape, and it's beautiful at the end.
I love just how audio works with the visuals, right? And most of us, I don't have a great audio ear, but you can feel it, right? And that's what audio has that power to do. So it's really cool. Hey, I want to get back to questions because there's a lot of them, and it's been a bit. So this is a relatively easy one, I think, for Dave. What's the biggest film project you guys have ever made?
Ooh, I think that probably, okay, it's either Worlds Apart or Trouble Brewing. Worlds Apart in kind of scope as far as number of locations. So we had kind of post-apocalyptic Earth. Sorry, we had Happy Earth, post-apocalyptic Earth, and alien planet, and a spaceship. So that was kind of as far as the environment goes, and the number of characters. Trouble Brewing had one very complex, detailed landscape. And then the actual, if you guys have seen it, so there's a couple of things. The troll was very challenging because of the layering of the clothing on the character. And getting that to work, and the musculature to be believable, and then the mill, the house that he lives in, had to be constructed so that it could fall apart. And this is something we actually had broken down buildings in both of those films. And one of the things that we had the opportunity to educate students about is that in order to make something look broken down, you have to know how to build it right. Otherwise, it's not convincing. And so we actually took a look at how are buildings framed? How are they put together? What are the parts that would go together? How would they go together properly? How might they go look if they started to break, where would that start to fail? How would we illustrate that? And so the mill was a very complex project, and especially the collapse of it. The water simulation in that film also had a big challenge to that too.
Because you brought up Worlds Apart, I happen to have it teed up here, the trailer, not the whole film.
Yeah, that's fine.
So let's just watch that, since you just spoke about it, and then we'll get back to the questions. I love that. It's a great trailer. You think about it from the audio standpoint, visually, it's also beautiful. Thank you, folks. I see some hands. I appreciate it. Speak a little bit more to that audio component with Dave on the visuals.
I think you just feel it when you watch that trailer. The rhythmically drives it. One of the, again, I talked a little bit about this earlier. It's you create these visual performances of your characters, and it's really easy to get very excited at the beginning, and then it's very easy to get to really question kind of how how communicative those performances are, because you get used to them. You get used to what you're seeing. And the thing that's missing is the audio. And we like pretty pictures. Or we like, you know, who doesn't like a good zombie film? Disturbing things can be attractive too. But audio works on another level. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about how seeing the audio team, when they really hit it and when they really match what the story is trying to do. And the same thing is going to be true for games also. You know, I don't know how many, I mean, there's a whole industry of game composing. You know, you can buy soundtracks to games. You know, people just use them as ambient music in their house. You know, it works on another level. Sometimes it's, you know, we see the obvious, which is oftentimes the visuals, but we feel the audio. And so I think that's, you know, that trailer, and especially I think Worlds Apart and some of the other films are great examples of how those things work hand in hand.
And the easiest way to also, for this example, if you watch any animation, your favorite animation movie or film, or play a video game, and try to turn off the speaker and play and watch it, and you will see a difference, right? Even though it's amazing visual, but something is missing.
Go play Silent Hill when it's silent. It's not the same.
Dave, you brought up games, so I'm going to throw it to Ricardo for a moment. So Ricardo, you're not getting as much of the limelight here, and you are leading our largest program, which is game engineering, game design, and game art. How do the things that you heard so far about the animation, which you obviously use in your games, and the audio, how does that impact what you guys do in Game Studio?
Oh yeah, definitely. And first of all, I was having a great time listening to everyone. So awesome. I'm gonna go here, and oh wait, I should probably say something. Yeah, no, it's you know what you're gonna find is a similar theme, right? Like all the departments work together, right? Like, you know, we do have computer science people. Obviously, we have our own game engineers, you know, that know how to work in the engine. We have our own artists, game artists, but we also have artists from DAA come in. Sometimes we have computer science people come in. You know, we definitely need audio. You know, we've already kind of established that, like, a game without audio is just, it doesn't have the same level of immersion. And that's really what it is about a video game, right? So, you know, in games, it's really a gameplay, game mechanics. That's really the driving force. Like that dictates what the art style is going to be. That dictates, you know, the audio. That dictates the story, right? Like everything has to revolve around making it a fun, immersive experience, right? You know, someone asked earlier, where does game engineering come in? It's like throughout the whole thing. You know, a game is really just a piece of software, right? You're just creating entertainment software as opposed to like educational or, you know, business software. So right from the beginning, you know, game design is really linked to game engineering, because design can have really great ideas, but like it's really up to the engineer to kind of make those things, you know, implement it and make it happen. You know, we have the artists that use all the kind of the same tools, but instead of rendering for film, they're going to render for real time. So we use Unreal Engine, you know, Unity. It's really kind of depending on the project, what game engine they want to use. And then, you know, we always kind of work with audio. We kind of bring them in a little bit just to talk about what our needs are going to be. But like kind of like similar to a film, they really come in at the end, because, you know, games are so non-linear. Like, for example, everything is done in modular pieces. So like our audio studio, it's like, well, they need to make a sound, like a scary sound bite, or like, you know, like thematic music, and everything is kind of played depending on the actions of the player. So it's not like this one music is really going to play all the time.
You're stepping over my toe, Ricardo. I suppose that's my line.
Well, I'm just telling you an abstract version. I have no idea how the magic happens. I'm just like, this is what I want. No, or this is what I want the students to want. But yeah, it's the same thing. Like, player is running into they're outside. It's like, oh, outside music, friendly. Then they go into, a scary house, and then the music has to change. So you never know what the player.
Okay, I need to step in, Ricardo. Okay,
Yeah.
I can't bear it. I thought I would leave you talking, but I can't not bear it, right? So here we go. So the challenge doing the sound for the game, it's very different than doing a sound for animation, because animation is fixed media, right? After the picture is locked and we put the sound, let's say you have a sign that somebody knocked on the door. We just attach the sound like cook, cook, that's it. It's done. Once it's rendered, it stays there forever and nobody can change it. Game is like different. It's like a real world. It's like a vote. If you play a game, you know that you can never play the same game twice exactly the same, because always different. It's like a real world. So doing the sound for the game is very challenging. The same thing with the knocking or even the footstep. You cannot have like about 2-3 footsteps and randomly swap them. You're gonna have to create, and actually game audio designer need to know how to program. You heard about the game engineering in the game design. The same thing. My audio student who work with the game title, they know how to program as well. So they have to create a system. They usually use Blueprint in Unreal Engine to create a small system that I can manipulate the sample in real time, manipulate it randomly, like about 100 or 1,000 different variations. So you can never hear the same footstep again in the game, right? So that's one example of the sound effects. The music is even more challenging. Music composition for film, for animation, it's much easier, because if you have, let's say, if you have a scene for 30 seconds and you need music for that 30 seconds, all you need to do is just write 30-second music piece, done. And you map it into the scene, you're done. That's it, I can walk away. Game is different. Let's say I want to write a piece of music for that area, like a room, right? We need to have some kind of music in there. Now, here's a challenging part. A player can get inside that room and stay there for 5 seconds and walk out. A player can get inside that room and stay there for an hour. And sometimes they just get in there and let go the controller, go take a bath, go eat cereals, come back after 2 hours, right? So what's the challenge is you have to write music somehow that it sounds good in terms of only 5 seconds. It still sounds good in 5 minutes, and it still sounds good in 2 hours. So we call that interactive game composition or music composition. You have to write something in terms of module, like a Lego pieces, that in real time, you can actually plug one module or one musical phase after another. So you can build up based on the duration of the player stay in whatever that area.
So Zoe, I can't believe I've never thought about this before after all the years we've worked together.
You never talked to me.
Yeah, apparently. So this is fascinating to me, because I never really thought about what you're saying. So for that music to change dynamically, because you could be in a room for 5 seconds or 5 minutes, you're saying you basically make or compose small segments some kind of software is stacking or stopping depending on what the movement is. I don't know why I never thought about that before, but it's amazing.
And also we can have different arrangement each time as well, because the whole thing of we try to get the player to be immersive. You have to create something different every time. If you hear exactly the same thing, they don't feel immersive anymore, because that's not real life, right? So we also have a different arrangement for the same piece of music for the same area. We also have different arrangement that if next time the player play the game again and is in the same spot, they still can hear the same sound. The same song, but with slightly different arrangement, because they don't feel like, oh, this is just the same thing all over and over again. So that's
here's what I'm thinking, and let's see what our audience thinks. I think it would be great to do one of these with you and Ricardo, focused exclusively on how you do this for games, and show people what's the process for this 5 second versus 50 second versus 5 minutes. I think people would find that fascinating. What do you guys think? That'd be a whole nother webinar. Yeah. It might just be me attending, it looks like, but I'm going to be there. So there we go. There's some people.
Well,
so ahead, Dave.
If I could just touch on one thing that I think hasn't quite been touched on yet from this discussion, and it's true across all the platforms because it has absolutely nothing to do with technology, and that is that all of these projects give you experience working as part of a team under a little bit of pressure to create the best results possible. And if you ask anybody, they may not use the exact same words, but you ask anybody working in an industry that is part of a team and collaborates and cooperates with other coworkers to accomplish a project, they will say there's only two things that they're looking for in a coworker: do good work and be good to work with. It's all you have to do. If you can do those two things, you will have a job in the industry for as long as you want. If you don't go do good work, but you're good to work with, and if you do good work, but you're not good to work with, it's not worth their time. You're going to wind up causing, and it's not that anybody's going to, here is going to create that problem, but it's a skill. It takes some experience to have a difference of opinion with somebody about something and come to a successful conclusion. Sometimes it's your idea, sometimes it's somebody else's idea. Mm-hmm. No matter whose idea it is, you have to execute with the same enthusiasm and with the same dedication, no matter whose idea or whose preference it was that was chosen. And that's a great experience that you come out of from these group projects.
Actually, I was thinking in same thing what Dave just said in some other ways, but let me dovetail on what he just said is so important about the experience of some of the projects I ran for my DataWorks class and what it is. First of all, what we are trying to say here is this is the honeymoon period. I tell my students, this is the safe environment to test your communication skills, okay? And be the teamwork where you are groomed how to do it. You get, 5 months of project skills in real world, 2 semesters, 5 months. You are working with the teams, your mentor, your faculty, project managers, whoever they are, plus the client. One thing what we saw, when the students come the first time, they're so shy, they hardly speak, they have never got, external clients to speak up, but we are there to prompt them. Hey, everybody needs to participate. Everybody needs to talk to that client and then ask questions and then teamwork. So what happens is that gives a safe environment that, oh, it's not a stupid question. Ask any question. It's okay. It's okay to learn from it. So this fosters that very well for the student. And then what happens when they go to they get a job, they are already exposed to it. They know how to deal with the boss, how to talk and be, have that scrum, that stand up, talk in 15, in a very succinct way to tell them what they're supposed to tell. So yes, this is what that is. This is the other side of soft skills you keep on adding in your resume, in your portfolio. That's one of the things. And one more point, which
we only have 5 minutes, and I want to end with the video. So
only one second.
Last point.
Only one point
Yeah.
I'm going to tell about this is what you heard here is everybody, how we are intermingled with all of the departments, the technology and all that. But, again, another part I do want to even emphasize what you heard about the programming, the code and all that from everybody is logic is very important. So don't, lose that sight. You may think, oh, I don't need computer science. I don't need to know this. I don't need to know all this technology. I'm an artist. But guess what? Somewhere, somehow it comes to your need. So keep your mind open to be able to listen, be creative. Don't shut down saying, oh, it's not for me. Suddenly you find that, oh, that was very valuable. I learned so many, just like Eric, so excited. I got so excited with all these guys, what they're talking. I'd never known it.
We're getting to the end, but I do want to show you one of our short films. It's called Miles. I think it's contemporary. It's our most recent release. It made its way through all of the film circuits around the world, won tons of awards. So I hope you enjoy it, and then we'll just stay on for just a couple minutes to answer any last questions. So here we go.
Well, the ride is smooth enough.
Really? The previous owners named it Miles? Ridiculous.
You have been all set to hate this car ever since we drove it off the lot.
No, I'm trying to give it a chance.
Going on and on about no manual controls. Like you're such a great driver.
Well, that Buick we
The
saw
Buick?
had...
Again?
Well, at least that one hadn't been in a Class D accident before being refurbished.
So, it had to make a split-second decision before a crash. That happens all the time. Come on. How about taking your wife home in her shiny new car?
Miles. Route to 30 Marlin Court. What the heck?
Pretty buggy, huh?
Yeah, maybe I can... What in the... Oh, come on. Miles, pull over. Miles!
Oh my god.
It remembers what it did? Oh no. No, 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 no.
Miles, you don't have to do this. It wasn't your fault. Miles!
Let's go.
But
We have to go. So, we're getting the Buick, right?
Very, very powerful film. Yeah. I mean, I got chills, and I've seen it 1,000 times. Dave, can you just briefly, we're over time, just speak, give us a highlight about this or a challenge, and same thing with you, Zoe.
Yeah, I mean, I think from, with a film like this, it's trying to make a statement. I mean, some of the best stories are not only entertaining, but they also have a meaning to them. Not to say that they're right or wrong, but they communicate a point of view, a philosophy. And so for Miles, one of the challenges was to lead the viewer into the story before they knew, they discover the idea through the telling of the story, as opposed to being really heavy-handed and being, and presenting that story too close up front. And so I think from a storytelling point of view, and from a performance point of view, how do you manage the pacing of that? How do you engage the audience and draw them in? And then how do you navigate them down this road where it discusses some relatively serious topics, but in a way that allows them to, as an audience, to do it kind of emotionally and psychologically safely, but at the same time doesn't kind of discredit it or kind of minimize the importance of what it's trying to say. And I think the last statement there, I think we went back and forth on that a number of times. Do the characters say something? Do the characters not say something?
Right.
And a number of students people had seen the film felt like it was a little bit too serious an ending for them, to find too much enjoyment. But at the same time, you can't be too light, because then it minimizes what came before it. And so I think that was a strong balance. Zoe can talk to the kind of the emotional trajectory that the score had to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, the big part of this one is the score, right? So I know that student did a lot of mock-up score, which is have different versions of score. They did that in the computer, everything computer, so it's easy to manipulate, making changes. And then when they finalize the music that they want to use for that one, and that's when we actually bring in musician to play with the live instrument. Everything music in there, it's original. Even the music that you hear from that radio when they were in the car, there's a radio, that's also original. So they actually make a piece of music sound like radio kind of sound quality to play back on that one. And Miles, I believe that comes with 2 mixing versions, stereo and surround sound mixing. So what we hear here, it's just stereo, purely stereo, but that's going to be a different level of emotion if you actually hear in surround sound system.
Yeah. One other thing about Miles is it's I think it's the only Project X film with dialogue, extensive dialogue in it. There are character vocalizations in some of the other films, but the story is not carried through dialogue. And so one of the things we talked about, kind of, visual comes first and then audio at the end. One of the things that gets flipped when you're working with dialogue is that you actually have to record the dialogue early in the process
before,
because the actual facial animation and performance of the visuals has to be timed to that dialogue. So there's this kind of odd balance between
it's
recording the audio and doing editing of the audio before the visuals are there, and then syncing that up, and then audio comes in again at the end.
Yeah, because we need to map the lips movement to the actual dialogue.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to wrap things up because we're 5 minutes over, and I do value your time. So thank you to all of you that have stayed with us. I think we could do a whole session just on Miles and the technical nature. It's a wonderful film. It's very powerful. Thank you again for joining us today. For those of you that have, if you have further questions, you can go to our website, usv.edu. There's a request information button, or some of you have already applied. You're welcome to continue to stay on. We'd be happy to talk to you, or reach out to us at admission@usv.edu. Let's give a big round of applause to all of our panel tonight. What a great discussion. And it's the first time we've done this, and I think you guys did a superb job. So thank you very much.